She walked into the conference hall with a calm grace that made the room fall a little quieter. Her presence not loud yet undeniably magnetic. Her name was Zara, the newly hired analyst fresh out of a top Ivy League school, and already being whispered about in hushed tones between boardroom walls and water cooler corners. They called her brilliant, they called her stunning, but to Ayan and Rayan she was something much more dangerous. She was possibility. She was the one variable in their perfectly calculated lives that refused to be Salvadian. The sharper one, all clean lines and darker suits, had been the golden boy of the firm for years. Numbers obeyed him and clients trusted him. His charm rested in his confidence, and he had never met a problem he could not solve until now, because now every time Zara passed his desk with her careful nods and thoughtful glances, he found his thoughts slipping from numbers to the curl of her hair, the curve of her smile, the sound of her laughter. Shared sometimes too freely with Riona Rian, the lighter one, more effortless in his magnetism with rolled-up sleeves and a soft grin that always hovered at the edge of Rionasav. At the edge of Rionasav, we look at this, and we all know I've been exploring that ACF, and we all know I've been exploring my cause. We see what Rionasav is we see to see. I get seed at Rionasav, Derepses, at we while we see yak. I get Rionasav. We have a kiss to we see us to we see if we see with you see we see with you we see you with kit with col with sick do we see ad we with you I give you we I can to we I with you such a skinker you got you guy get I to just if we I with a I keep something unsaid had been Ion's friend and rival since their first interview. Round they had risen together, survived market crashes together, celebrated bonuses and battled for promotions, and yet in all those years they had never once wanted the same thing until Hurt started with small things who got to sit beside her. In meetings, who offered to walk her out when it rained, who brought her coffee without asking, and she smiled at both of them. Always gracious, always kind, and always infuriatingly unreadable, and neither of them knew whether her compliments were polite or pointed, whether the way she lingered after work meant anything at all, and yet neither of them could step back, because stepping back meant surrendering something neither was ready to lose. One evening, the three of them stayed late, finalizing projections before a big presentation, and as the office emptied out, Zara leaned back in her chair, stretching slightly as she said, "This is the part of the job I actually love. Building something from nothing, seeing the future before anyone else." Does and Ayan said, "You mean like predicting trends?" And she smiled, "Not quite. I mean knowing where to place your trust even before the numbers back it up." Rayan had watched her then quietly the way he always did and said, "And what if the numbers never catch up? What if it stays a risk?" And she turned her gaze to him, soft and steady. "Then maybe it's still worth holding on to," she replied, and for a moment time stilled between them, but only for a moment, because Ayan cleared his throat and stood, brushing off his suit, saying, "Well, some investments are only valuable when shared." In Zara looked at both of them like she knew exactly what they meant and exactly what she was doing that night. Ayan stayed up drafting new models while Rayan walked the city, trying to forget the way she had looked at him like she saw something he hadn't shown anyone in years, and neither of them knew that. Zara lay awake to heart, full of questions she didn't have answers to, wondering whether she would be the prize or the reason something beautiful finally broke. Days passed and the tension grew like heat beneath tailored suits, like static clinging to air thick with unspoken words. Zara kept working. Eyes focused, hands steady, yet something about her shifted. She no longer lingered by Rayan's desk. She no longer teased Ayan about his coffee preference. She became a little more distant, a little more silent, as if protecting herself from what she already knew was coming. Was Ayan who made the first move, not in words, but in action. He arranged a quiet dinner after a client event, choosing a rooftop restaurant that overlooked the city she loved, and when she arrived dressed in something soft and elegant, his breath caught for a second. He didn't talk about work. He talked about her dreams. Her reasons for choosing finance over fashion like her mother wanted, and when the check came, he didn't ask her for anything. He just looked at her like she was already his, and when she smiled across the candlelight, it felt like victory. But Rayan knew he knew because he saw the flicker in her eyes the next morning, saw the way she avoided his gaze, the way her voice trembled. Just once during the morning briefing, and that evening he didn't ask her to dinner. He asked her for honesty. They stood on the fire escape watching the city pulse beneath them, and he said, "I don't want to play this game. I just want to know if I should let go." Zara turned to him, her expression unreadable, but her eyes said everything she was afraid she was. Torn, she was in too deep and yet not ready to surface, she said. "I didn't expect to feel this much, not for either of you." And Rayan took her hand slowly, gently, not trying to win, just trying to understand, and she didn't pull away the next day. Ayan found out from someone else from whispers that weren't whispers anymore, and he stormed into the trading floor eyes. Dark, jaw tight, and he didn't yell, he didn't accuse, he just stood before Zara and said, "Tell me I'm wrong," and she didn't. Because she couldn't thought was the end of a partnership. The start of silence between two men who once shared everything, and the beginning of something raw and real between a girl who wanted to believe in more and a man who had been waiting too. Be chosen months later, the firm celebrated its best quarter in years, and Zara was promoted, and Rayan held her hand beneath the table while Ayan toasted from across the room with a smile that didn't reach his eyes, and maybe he had lost, but he also understood now some investments aren't about the returns, some are about the risk, and the way a heart learns to break and still keep beating. And as Zara looked between them two men who once saw her as a dream, and now a decision, she realized she wasn't an investment. She was the one choosing where to place her own forever.